Right, it has been a while since I have done one of these. No real reason for doing it. Actually, I'm not even going to do any notes. There were just some ideas that I couldn't be bothered to write down and thought I'd probably be able to capture them quicker this way. So I just finished listening to the Sean Carroll podcast, the latest episode, one with Yasha, someone, Yasha, let's see if I can find out, Yasha. Yasha. It was Yasha. No, it was Yasha Monk. Pretty good, not bad. I do get the feeling that, Sean Carroll isn't... he's a bit more progressive than most of the stuff that I listen to, like Sam Harris and whatnot. And I'm glad about that, I have nothing against that. There are some things that some people on the podcast have said that, that he agreed with, that I certainly question. I mean, there's no question that I question it. I question it. God. But I don't really do the whole political where am I on the spectrum thing. I don't really do it. I don't think it's good to do it. And I think you'd be better off. I mean, I imagine if I were to do it, I'd probably end up centrist. Centre-left, maybe, probably. I don't know. I don't really care. But I think it's best not to know, personally. Because I think what you do know, I think if you find out you're a little bit left, then you believe you're left. So then you, whatever you find out yourself to be, you just accentuate that to the extreme. So if you're a centrist, I don't know how you'd really become more centre, but I guess you could. Anyway, divides us up into simpler factions, and that's not necessarily what we want. One of the things he was talking about was he reiterated something that I said that I'm not sure if I've said on here, but it came up a few times during the discussion I had with my sister ages ago about that book that a person wrote called Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race. And he was talking about we know that things like white privilege have existed for a long time, stuff like that. And I think for me it's just the old language barrier problem, because white privilege doesn't really capture it, I think, all that much. I think it's poor terminology. Maybe I think undoubtedly on the average, white people are just better off than minorities in general. But I think to call it white privilege suggests that by nature of being born white, you're guaranteed some kind of privilege, right? And I think that's a failure. I think that you're just going to run up against all kinds of issues with that. But I don't deny that on the average, white people probably do experience some kind of on the average privilege, but obviously people then extrapolate that to the individuals, and that doesn't really work, and that's where the problem arises. And that's why when you have a book like just a motive like Why I No Longer Talk to White People About a Certain Topic, you're then treating individuals as a whole, which is obviously what we know the problem to be when you treat individuals purely as members of groups. That's what racism is, really, and all discrimination is, essentially. So I would recommend people don't do that. What else was there? They were talking about how it made me think about. Well, they were talking about which one of the three. He was talking. It was the genie section. We were talking about which out of three options would he pick would he think would be best, essentially, and basically saying that if you want to, have non-fake news, basically, then basically get those out of my system there. Then start up your own news company, and I think that's kind of what that Quillette thing is all about. But I'm not sure. I get the feeling that they're kind of Patreon supported, and I imagine lots of people think that's the way to go, because then you're not getting, you're not biased. But I think it's quite easy to see how that would become biased very quickly, because if you're writing to get your patrons to support you, then you end up just writing clearly biased things to your... I mean, if you're lucky enough to have patrons that really do just want to read whatever the truth is, then I guess you're fine. But I think that's very hard to do, because people aren't often that open to having their minds changed, and as soon as anything goes against what they think they're paying for, they're paying because they're hearing the things that they want to be told. Then as soon as you print something that isn't that, then you might lose a patron. Anyway, Another thing was something up. I write a few more things for the book. Kind of slowed down quite a lot, but I think that's because I'm because I'm closing in on having all of the main topics that I want to cover on it done. So now I'll just get to the point of, and it's not that many words. It's like, I don't know, 25,000 at the moment. So I don't really want it to be a long book or anything. I want it to be a good book, but it's obviously not going to be that either. So I might not want it to be long. No. But right, writing about game theory, and I know it's a shame that I know nothing about game theory, but when you try to learn about it, it seems like there's a failure to recognise that game theory can be, or needs to consider things that aren't just closed systems. So that the Nash equilibrium thing, all those things of like the prisoner's dilemma, telling you that the best option is for you to confess, because on average it works out. It's obviously not perfect in a closed system, because once you confess that time, never mind. I don't want to get into the whole how that's only one game, and across games, if people recognise that you're the person dobs the other person in and stuff like that. Well, it's not so much dobbing, because obviously you shouldn't do the bad thing in the first place. So, but anyway, if you're in a situation where your immediate gain was someone else's immediate loss, then it might not always be best for you to take that immediate gain, even if on average it works out better. Anyway, the Nash equilibrium thing. Oh yeah, so I saw the clip. So I watched the Beautiful Mind movie ages and ages ago at school, and I'd forgotten most of it. But while I was looking up game theory, one of the clips came up where John Nash was quoting, or was fighting arguing against it. He basically rebuts a quote by, what's his name, founding father guy, one of them, who said the optimum outcome, or something to the effect of, the optimum outcome for each individual is for him to pursue his own aims, or something like that, or pursue what's best for him. Which some people might think that's what I'm saying, but closest to what I'm saying is what John Nash says, is that what's really best for the individual is what's best for everyone else as well. So there you go. Maybe John Nash has already got it, and or maybe at least the character in the movie playing John Nash got it. I don't know whether he actually said it. I don't know whether they embellished it or anything, made it better. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at there. So hey, I've written a book that doesn't even need to be written. I haven't written it yet. So that's all I wanted to say there. I managed to drag that out for 8 whole minutes. Absolutely nothing said. No, nothing of value. It's 8 minutes. Nothing of value. You're welcome, world. Anything else I wanted to cover? Racking my brain here. Rack. No, I think we're alright. Yeah. So yeah, the problem with the white privilege thing is that the white aspect might be something that applies to the average, but then is used because it's an ambiguous term. When you say white privilege, it suggests it applies to all the individual, but it doesn't necessarily. So that's where you go wrong there. Hopefully someone can do that, or rather just interpret it correctly. Yeah, let's just not fight racism with racism, guys. Okay, how's about that? All right, that'll do. Oh, there were some other things I could have put in here, but oh yeah. So I was thinking about certain types of joke and how it's really important. I think a lot of people don't get when humour can be. How did I word it? Jokes can either be at the expense of something or ideology or whatever, or jokes can either be coming from that, let's say, misinformed view. So I make an awful lot of racism jokes, and hopefully they don't get interpreted as racist jokes, because they aren't. I make a lot of misogyny jokes, but they are not misogynistic jokes, because what I'm trying to do is highlight how stupid ideas such as racism and misogyny are. Not the ideas being stupid, recognise them, ideas in terms of, like, if you're someone who endorses or practices racism or misogyny. So that's what that does, and I think humour is one of probably the best weapons for fighting them. Same with homophobia versus homophobic jokes. You want as many homophobia jokes as you can get, and it's I guess the problem arises when people, I mean, I don't know how much of my humour isn't sarcasm, I don't know. So you can say a racist joke, right? But if the way that you say it is to mock what is being said, then that's actually I can't remember which one I said now. Did I say homophobic or? Anyway, you can make a racist joke, but if it's being said in a way that makes fun of what's being said, so if the humour of the joke is to make fun of the content of what's being said, then the joke isn't racist. The joke is a racism joke. Anyway, I imagine that people will fail to understand that, but who cares? There are 0 people hearing this. But I'm just, claiming the thought as my own, so that one day, if any smart person says it, I can say that I said it. Fuck you. Okay, this has been real great. Got stuff to do now, so see ya. I'm so mind-bendingly stupid and I completely forgot to actually say the thing that got brought up in that podcast that came up in the conversation. Well, I think I attributed it to something else, but really what it was when he said there's an inconsistency in what they're saying. The people who are saying that the system is in favour of white people, blah blah blah, and but simultaneously we shouldn't give them an inch, right? Which I didn't think is the right terminology, but anyway. Alright, turn of phrase. That's a point that I was making with the whole why I no longer talk to white people about race, because it makes so the book, as far as I could tell, I think I actually have made this point on here before. I think I've spoken about this before, but if I haven't, anyway. If it's true that the system is tilted in favour of white people and run by white people, and it's just a bunch of white people trying to oppress other minorities, then surely self-segregation from that group is a terrible tactical move, because if they're the only ones that can enforce anything, then you need to employ their power somehow. It's not really right, because I don't actually believe that there's a conspiracy of white. Well, I don't doubt that there are some racist people in positions of power that are conspiratorially working to oppress people of whom they're discriminating against. But in terms of the system itself being, well, this is another language barrier problem, because the system can be like the rules and regulations that govern the system, but other people interpret the system to be just made up the system, including the people that are in positions in that system, which is fine. But that's the problem with our language, again. Anyway, if it is the case that the only people who are able to enforce real change of any type are white, and you're saying that you refuse to cooperate with those people, then no change is going to happen, right? Anyway, it's just a little thing that I forgot to say there. So yeah, that's something that the book was saying. Basically, I no longer talk to white people because I can't even remember what the point was, because it's infuriating and because they just don't get it, and she gave a stereotypical response that she experienced when she tried to do it, and apparently it was like the white person that rolled their eyes, whatnot. I think that'll just do, really. If it's true that only people of a certain skin colour, by nature of their skin colour, can enforce change because of the way the system's set up, only allows them to do it, then you're going to need... The only way to change the system so that it doesn't do that would be to change the system, and the only people that can change the system is those people that are able to change the system. You get it? Okay, that'll do. This has been terrible. 3 minutes and 24 seconds, really? I'm an idiot.